It's early morning. The sun rises softly over the quiet neighborhood. Margaret sits by her window, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The light touches her face, gentle and kind, but her shoulders feel tight. She sighs, rolling them slowly, hoping the stiffness fades away. For years, she has carried small aches like secret companions. Each day, a little more tension settles into her neck and back. She remembers the days she could lift her garden tools with ease. Now, even reaching for the top shelf brings a quiet ache. Still, she smiles. She knows her body has stories to tell. It isn't pain she fears, but forgetting how to move with grace. She wants to stand tall again, to feel light and open, to breathe without that weight pressing down from her shoulders. Somewhere deep inside, she believes there's still freedom in her frame. It just needs a little care, a little time, a slower rhythm. Today, she decides to listen to her body, not rush it. She places her tea aside, takes a deep breath and begins to stretch. Slowly, gently, as if greeting an old friend. This is her moment of quiet healing. And it all starts with one slow shoulder stretch. Margaret always believed that strength was silent. It wasn't in loud effort or heavy lifting. It was in the small moments, standing tall, breathing deep, moving gently. But lately, her body had grown quiet in another way. Her shoulders had started to curl inward, as if protecting her heart. Her back ached after long afternoons tending her garden. She would pause, pressing her palm to her shoulder, feeling the tightness deep inside. It wasn't pain exactly, just a whisper of tired muscles asking for rest. Her daughter once told her, "Mom, your posture makes you look sad." Margaret laughed it off, but inside she wondered if it was true. Maybe it wasn't sadness, just years of habit, leaning forward, forgetting to stretch. She used to walk briskly every morning, greeting her neighbors with a smile. Now her steps were slower, her gaze drawn to the ground. Each time she reached for something high, her body reminded her to slow down. But slowing down had its beauty too. It gave her time to notice the way light danced across her living room. It allowed her to feel her breath, steady and soft. Still, she missed that lightness in her shoulders, the kind she had when she danced at her wedding, or when she carried her newborn daughter, cradled close with strength and love. Back then, her body felt open, free, and strong. Now, the stiffness felt like a quiet wall between her and that memory. One morning, while reading by the window, she noticed the way she sat. Her shoulders were curved, her neck bent low, her breath shallow. She straightened slightly, feeling a small pull across her chest. It was uncomfortable, but also awakening. She realized how long she had carried herself this way, folded inward. Her body wasn't weak, it was just waiting to be heard. She smiled to herself, gently rolling her shoulders back. The motion was small, but it sparked something deep within her. She began doing it each day, a slow roll, a gentle stretch. Each time her breath grew fuller, her chest a little more open. She noticed her reflection in the mirror, posture changing little by little. Her back straighter, her chin lifted, her spirit lighter. It wasn't about youth or beauty anymore. It was about comfort, confidence, and self-kindness. Her body was aging, yes, but it was also teaching her to listen, to move with intention instead of habit, to care instead of push. She found joy in the rhythm of small movements, stretching slowly, breathing deeply, smiling softly. Each motion a conversation between her and the body that had carried her so far. Sometimes she thought of her garden, how it thrived when tended gently. She realized her body was the same way. It didn't need force or perfection, only patience and love. And in that realization, Margaret felt something shift. Her shoulders softened. Her breath deepened. Her heart, for the first time in a long while, felt light again. Margaret began to wonder why her shoulders felt heavier with each passing year. It wasn't only time or age. It was something deeper, something hidden in the way she carried herself. Her doctor once said, "Your muscles remember what you teach them." The words lingered in her mind long after she left the clinic. Maybe her body had learned to curl in, to guard itself from the world. Years of bending over books, dishes, and soil had shaped her posture. The small things added up, moments she didn't even notice. Every time she hunched forward to read, her chest grew a little tighter. Every time she forgot to stretch, her back grew a little stiffer. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, like dust settling over time. Her body adapted quietly until stillness felt normal. But the truth was simple. Muscles need movement to stay alive. When they stop moving, they forget how to open, how to breathe. Margaret thought about how she had ignored those tiny signals. The ache after cooking dinner. The stiffness when reaching for her favorite cup. She would shrug it off, telling herself, "I'm just getting older." But one evening, while massaging her shoulder, she realized something. It wasn't just her muscles that were tired, it was her habits. She had spent years caring for others, but rarely for herself. Her body had been speaking softly, asking for kindness, and she had been too busy to listen. That night she sat in her living room, lights dim, and closed her eyes. She pictured her shoulders, the tension sitting there like small stones. She breathed in deeply, imagining warmth flowing through her neck. On the exhale, she pictured the stones melting, sinking away. For the first time, she felt what it meant to truly notice herself. Her body was not an enemy. It was her oldest friend, patient and forgiving. It had carried her through laughter, through loss, through years of quiet love. And all it wanted now was gentle care. The next morning, she stood before the mirror again. She looked at her reflection, a woman still strong, still beautiful. She lifted her shoulders up, then rolled them back slowly. The motion felt awkward at first, but comforting too. It was like returning home after a long journey. Her chest opened, and she felt her breath deepen, filling the space inside her. She thought about how the body mirrors the mind. When we close ourselves off, our posture follows. When we open up, our spirit rises with it. Margaret smiled softly at the thought. She realized that posture was not just a physical thing. It was emotional, spiritual, a reflection of how she met the world. From that day forward, she made a quiet promise. To listen more. To move slower. To honor the body that had never stopped showing up for her. And in that promise, she began to rediscover her balance. Not just in her shoulders, but in her life. Margaret began reading about movement. Curious how something so simple could heal. She discovered the quiet magic of slow stretching. Not the kind that rushed or strained, but the kind that listened. She learned that muscles are like memories. They need patience to release. When moved too fast, they resist. But when guided slowly, they trust. The idea made sense to her. After all, hadn't life taught her the same thing? That gentle progress always lasted longer than sudden change. She smiled as she thought of her garden again. How flowers bloomed when watered softly, not drowned in haste. The body, she realized, was no different. It needed rhythm, breath, and kindness to flourish. She read that slow stretching increases blood flow, bringing warmth to tired joints. It helps the muscles remember flexibility, like music returning to a silent room. Her shoulders, her back, her neck, all could wake again just slowly. She stood up, curious to try. She rolled her shoulders once, twice, feeling the small creak of stiffness. It wasn't painful, just unfamiliar. She breathed in, lifting her shoulders toward her ears. Then exhaled, letting them drop with a sigh. Something shifted, almost invisible but real. The movement was small, yet she felt her body respond with relief. Each slow roll brought awareness, each breath a quiet thank you. She noticed how her heartbeat softened when she moved gently, how her chest opened wider when she let time stretch with her. She didn't rush, didn't count, didn't push. She just moved as if painting calm through the air. Her mind wandered to the science she had read earlier. How slow movements signal safety to the brain. How tension melts when the body feels cared for, not forced. She realized stretching wasn't about strength or flexibility alone. It was a language, one that spoke of patience and respect. She began to see her body not as something to fix, but something to understand. Each joint, each muscle, had a story, a purpose, a memory. The slow shoulder stretch became her morning ritual. She would rise with the sun, close her eyes and move. A circle, a lift, a release, her breath guiding the way. And as days passed, something beautiful began to unfold. Her posture started to shift, subtly but surely. Her chest opened like a flower turning toward light. Her shoulders no longer clung to her ears. Her head lifted, her step steadier, her mood lighter. It wasn't magic, it was mindfulness in motion. She realized that moving slowly wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. It was grace. It was her way of saying, I am still here, I am still growing. Each stretch became a soft celebration of that truth. And in the gentle rhythm of breath and movement, Margaret found her strength again. The morning light poured softly through the curtains. Margaret stood in her living room barefoot, feeling the coolness of the floor. She took a deep breath, steady and full, and let her body relax. It was time to move, not to exercise but to care. Her hands rested by her sides as she closed her eyes for a moment. She imagined the day beginning with ease, her shoulders ready to listen. She lifted them gently toward her ears, breathing in through her nose. Then rolled them back, slow as a wave returning to the sea. The sound of her breath filled the quiet room. She felt the muscles at the base of her neck loosen with each motion. Once more she rolled slow, graceful, deliberate. The stiffness began to melt, replaced by a warmth that spread across her back. Good, she whispered to herself, smiling softly. She lifted her arms out to the sides, palms open to the air. Small circles, forward, slow and controlled. The air brushed her fingers like silk. She reversed direction, backward now, her joints moving in rhythm. It wasn't about how far she reached, but how present she felt. Her breath guided her, in, out, slow, steady. She could almost feel her heartbeat syncing with the flow. Then she clasped her hands gently behind her back. Her fingers intertwined, her chest began to open. She lifted her heart forward, shoulders drawing down and away from her ears. The stretch was soft, almost tender, yet filled with power. She felt space where tightness used to live. The corners of her lips lifted in quiet satisfaction. Each breath deepened her connection to the moment. Each movement told her body, I see you, I care for you. Her arms dropped again, resting softly at her sides. She stood still, letting her spine lengthen naturally. The world outside continued, birds sang, a car passed, but she stayed within. Inside that stillness, she found peace. She realized she wasn't just stretching her shoulders. She was stretching time, expanding it into calm. Her movement slowed even more, like a dance only she knew. A roll here, a lift there, a gentle shake to release tension. Every second was a small conversation between her and her body. No rush, no judgment, only care. As she breathed in again, her chest filled with lightness. Her posture straightened, not from force but from freedom. The air around her seemed clearer, her thoughts softer. She understood now why slow mattered. Because in slowing down, she could feel every detail of being alive. When she finally opened her eyes, she felt renewed. Her shoulders no longer whispered in pain. Instead, they hummed quietly with warmth and ease. She laughed softly, her spirit lifted like the morning sun. It was just a stretch, simple and small. Yet it had changed everything inside her. Margaret stood taller that day, lighter, calmer, whole again. Margaret sat quietly after her stretch, her breath soft and steady. The room was filled with morning light, golden and calm. She could feel her shoulders resting lower, her spine tall but relaxed. A warmth lingered where tension once lived, spreading through her back and chest. She closed her eyes again, just to feel the stillness more deeply. In that quiet, she noticed something she hadn't before: peace. It wasn't the kind that came from doing nothing. It was the kind that came from being fully present. Her body felt lighter, yes, but so did her thoughts. It was as if her mind had stretched along with her muscles. For years she had carried invisible weight, worries, responsibilities, expectations. Each one resting somewhere in her body, silently shaping her posture. Now, with every breath, she felt those old burdens loosening. She realized that movement and emotion were not separate. When her shoulders tightened, her heart followed. When her chest opened, so did her spirit. The connection was gentle but undeniable. She thought about how often she'd ignored that link before. How many times she had rushed through her days without awareness. Her body had been whispering all along, asking for attention. Now she was finally listening. Each inhale became a promise. Each exhale a release. She remembered a quote she once read: "The body keeps the score." And she understood now what it meant. Every sigh, every slump, every pause, it all told a story. Her story, not one of pain but of endurance. She placed a hand over her heart, feeling its quiet rhythm. This simple gesture reminded her that she was still learning to be kind. Kind to herself, to the body that had carried her through everything. The more she stretched, the more she felt that kindness grow. Her mind wandered to small things: the laughter of her grandchildren, the scent of fresh herbs in her garden, the sound of rain tapping against the roof. All of it felt sharper now, more alive. As if her body had opened a door that her mind could finally step through. She realized this slow movement wasn't just physical therapy. It was a way back to awareness, to gratitude. When she moved with care, she thought with care. When she breathed deeply, her worries thinned like mist. It wasn't magic. It was mindfulness wrapped in motion. Her shoulders had carried years of emotion, and now they carried ease. She smiled softly at the thought. The connection between body and mind was real and healing. She didn't need perfect balance or endless energy. All she needed was presence. A moment of stillness. A breath that reached the soul. Margaret opened her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone else, just to herself. And in that whisper, peace settled deeper than ever before. The next few days passed quietly, filled with small, deliberate moments. Margaret found herself looking forward to her morning stretches. It wasn't just routine anymore, it was a ritual of care. Each sunrise brought a reminder that healing didn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it was found in the slow roll of a shoulder, or in the pause between one breath and the next. She no longer needed long workouts or complicated routines. Just a few minutes of gentle motion each day was enough. She would stand by her window, the same one where her journey began. The world outside seemed calmer now, or maybe she had changed. Her reflection showed a woman who stood taller, softer, lighter. Her shoulders no longer curved forward with quiet fatigue. They rested naturally, supported by a spine that remembered alignment. Even her walks to the garden felt different now. Each step carried ease, each movement had purpose. When she reached down to trim her flowers, her back didn't ache as before. Her hands moved freely, her breath steady and sure. She felt connected, body, mind, and spirit in quiet harmony. Neighbors noticed too. "You look happier lately," one of them said with a smile. Margaret simply nodded, her eyes glowing with a secret understanding. It wasn't happiness from outside, but peace from within. She had learned that her body didn't need perfection, only presence. And presence came from these small, mindful stretches. One morning, as she sipped her tea, she thought about the journey. How something as gentle as a slow shoulder stretch could change so much. It had taught her to listen to herself again, to slow down when life rushed too fast, to notice how deeply her breath could fill her lungs, to care without demand, to move without pressure. She realized this wasn't just about posture anymore. It was about reclaiming grace in her everyday life. She began sharing the routine with her friends at the community center. They would gather after their morning walks, smiling, ready to move. Margaret guided them gently, her voice soft but steady. Breathe in, lift, exhale, release. Their laughter filled the room, their bodies swaying slowly together. It became a ritual of friendship, of connection, of shared care. No one hurried, no one competed. They simply moved, side by side, breathing in rhythm. Margaret looked around and felt proud, not of perfection but of peace. Her body, once stiff and burdened, now moved like water. Her heart, once tired, now beat with calm joy. She learned that small acts of care could ripple through life beautifully. Every gentle stretch was a promise to herself, a reminder that aging was not decline, but transformation. That softness could be strength, and that slowing down could lead to true renewal. As the day ended, she stood once more by her window. The light faded, but her posture remained tall and open. She took one last breath and smiled. This was how healing felt, simple, steady, and alive. The evening settled softly around her home. Margaret stood by the window once more, the sky brushed with fading gold. She rolled her shoulders gently, the movement now natural, almost effortless. Her breath came easy, deep, and calm. The ache that once lingered had turned into quiet strength. She smiled, realizing how far she had come without ever rushing. Every slow stretch had been a step toward peace. Every breath, a small act of love she had long forgotten to give herself. She thought of all the mornings she had doubted her body. And now here she was standing tall, shoulders open, heart light. The journey hadn't been grand or loud. It had been tender, quiet, and deeply human. She whispered softly, "Thank you," to no one in particular. Maybe to her body, maybe to the gentle rhythm of time. Outside the world grew still, but inside she felt alive. The day ended the way it began, in calm, steady motion. Margaret breathed once more, slow and full. She knew tomorrow she would stretch again. Not out of habit, but out of love. And in that love, she found her lasting grace.